Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tiny But Mighty podcast where we celebrate small businesses exclusively. Always. I am back for episode 10. I'm very excited about our guest today. Please make sure that you are subscribed to our channels wherever you're seeing them, following. And if you are live and you want to have your questions answered, please get them into the chat. I'm very excited for you to be able to meet David Broadwater of Expert Computer Services. So he has a bachelor's in computer science and worked in corporate for just shy of a decade. And then he set out on his own in 2006 for a small business that was going to be dedicated to both direct to customer services for computer services as well as serving other small businesses. So it's kind of like my small business, Main Street eMarket, that hosts this podcast, the small business that serves small business, talking about them serving small business. It's very meta stuff today. We're very excited to have this guest and be able to talk about what's unique to him. And as a small business, what is so unique about having computer services with basically an individual instead of these juggernaut companies, and how that is a little bit different. So I would like you to welcome David to the stage. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you. It's so good to have you. So let's get ourselves started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that 10 years in corporate? What was your journey coming into owning a business like?
Oh, gosh. Corporate was fun. It was interesting for a while. It really depends on who you're working for. I had always been fascinated with computers. I built my first one from scratch back in the 80s just if I could. I got the bug and never turned back. And even through a couple of different careers before this, that was, my hobby. I was a respiratory therapist who would fix the computers in the ICU because the IT department at the hospital fixed junk on it. And they would come up 2 weeks later and they'd go, oh, the RT fixed that a week ago. Where were you guys? And when I went into the corporate world, I have a background in a variety of specialties. So I ended up reporting to 3 different managers and being able to keep one of them happy at a time. And that was the kiss of death. Putting a hole in my stomach because there was just nothing I could do. But
Yeah. So I'm having a little struggle with your audio. You were breaking up towards the end, but I mean, gosh, how many times?
I'm running on a phone here.
Okay, perfect. So, but I mean, how many times have we been in that position where it's like, I can't please all the people all the time, so kind of take your number. But in corporate, they really do figure out how to make that hard. So,
well, a lot of IT departments and a lot of corporations tend to be very siloed.
Yes.
And groups within don't communicate a lot. The 3 managers that I reported to didn't talk to each other because they didn't like each other. So it was just I was always working at odds with myself. To be honest with you, it's just more than anybody you have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is a great reason to want to set out and do something independently and with skills that are as
I said to myself, it was like I can do better than this on my own.
Good. Well, so when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was 7-year-old Dave thinking about?
I wanted.
Nice. Do you have an earpiece with a microphone that you might be able to put into your phone? Because it just, every time you set it down, it starts to break up.
That's because I'm putting the microphone down. I'll just hold it for now.
Okay. So you wanted to be an astronaut?
I wanted to be an astronaut, just like every kid. I always had a hat. And when I found out that you had to spend probably 20 years in the military, and I was never going to make the weight requirements. that kind of to the wayside. Just like every boy's dream of being an astronaut going to the wayside.
Right. All right. So you started your business in 2006.
Yes.
And the last straw was really that 3-manager set. Sounds so exciting. But
it was a thrill.
But you're doing today and when you
Yeah.
set out, how are they different?
How are they different? Well, that's an interesting question. It's sort of exactly what I thought it was going to be, only not.
Okay.
It's always an adventure, never predictable, and that's something I could have told you when I first started out. Because the issues you encounter, although they're always the same, they're always different. I mean, basically, it's a big logic puzzle, and there are 10,000 things that can go wrong, and there's about 32 symptoms. So it's a matter of playing deductive reasoning to figure out what the problem isn't more than anything else. And that's the challenge of it. That's the thrill of it. And it's like, oh yeah, it's the same thing day after day. It is, but it isn't. It's just always something new. It's always a different puzzle to have to solve.
Awesome. I love it. I've discovered that muting my mic actually helps to make sure that yours is not breaking up. So when you see that happen, it's not for any other reason.
I heard that. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'll just keep going with that. But yeah, I love the idea that it's the same, but it's different because it helps you to create that structure to the way that you approach things. And obviously, computer science being so super logical, but I'm sure there's creative parts to the process too, right?
Oh yeah, it's well, part of the whole logic and deductive reasoning thing is using inspiration and using intuition, because you encounter certain situations so frequently, or basically situations that are so frequent, whereas you have the same series of symptoms or whatever, and you just make an intuitive leap and you just make a change that should be experimented with, but it works anyway.
I love it. That's awesome. So you do a B2B and a B2C piece, and there's different complexities with both. Which would use the what? Let's describe the differences between them for you. How do they show up differently?
Well, business to business is always a number one priority, because when I'm dealing with a residential customer, I mean, they're inconvenienced. I mean, they can't get to YouTube, or they can't get to their news station. When you're dealing with a business, they're losing money. They become a priority, because I'm responsible for putting their income stream back online. And like I say, it's always the most important issue. And my residential customers understand that. I explain that to them. When I deal with a business customer, they're always going to get first dibs on my time, because they're losing money. You're just being annoyed.
That's a really important distinction. And I'm sure that you have a balance between them. Would you say that you do about 50-50?
I'm more 60-40.
Okay,
Only
60-40.
because there are just so many personal computers out there with people who don't know or haven't been instructed in proper maintenance. So their things go wrong a little more readily. When you're in an office environment, you can give people basic instructions on computer maintenance and how to prevent problems from happening, and that keeps them at a minimum. I mean,
So
I've actually managers look at me and say, I don't know why we keep paying you. Nothing ever goes wrong. And then you just go,
that's the point. So, if you could give people three things that they should be doing with their instruments at home that would keep them working in tip top shape, what would you say they would be?
keep them clean, empty your junk files out on a regular basis, empty your browsers out, keep the cache clean. That prevents so many problems from happening. I have software that I put on everybody's machine that they'll let me, you can do this with one click, and it'll clean up your registry. It'll empty out all your junk files and potentially hazardous and malicious files, because they like to hide in the browser cache more than anything. Turn it off when you're not using it. I like to use the analogy of, you don't leave your car running in the driveway when you're not going anywhere, do you? It's just a machine. Turn it off when you're not using it. Because some people leave their machines on all the time, like months at a time, and they wonder why it slows down and drags out. And it's a matter of, not only are you doing damage to your operating system by not letting updates happen. The third one is take the updates whenever they come your way. But just turning the machine off gives the computer a chance to straighten itself out and redo things that got done while it was on for 6.5 weeks.
That's fair.
Plus, you're giving National Grid an extra $200 a year by never turning your computer off. Because it's electricity whether you're using it or not.
That is a valid point. And it's
interesting. Wouldn't you like to give that money to a nice local restaurateur as opposed to National Grid? And I hardly ever get a no.
Seriously, that sounds like a delicious meal, $200. Let's think about that. That could really get you.
Years ago, it was a much better meal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But at the same time, I think about the fact that, people, when we go to sleep, which is inconvenient that we have to sleep, there's a lot of things that some of us want to get done over the course of a day, but we have to go to sleep. There's a lot of synaptic pruning. There's a lot of synaptic pruning that goes on and cleanup of debris inside of our brains while we sleep. Yep, and it sounds very similar to what your computer does.
Windows needs exactly the same thing. That updates get written into the registry. That's when files get deleted and put where they're supposed to be and flushed out of memory, because it's always good. There's no such thing as too much memory, and memory fills up. So when you turn the machine off, you clear that out and you start with a fresh palette.
That's awesome. So what about the folks that use all of the tabs that are open to be able to make their to-do list? How do they handle it? Because you have to close out that browser. I'm asking for a friend, definitely not for myself, because, okay.
Well, the trick is to use the correct browser, because there are many browsers out there. People think, you have Edge and you have Chrome and that's all there is. But no, by far and away, there are superior applications out there that do everything that they do and a little bit more, and look out for your safety. And in the case of, like, say, my favorite browser, which is Opera, it'll turn off open tabs that you're not using. So it'll free up resources for you. Keep it from getting...
That's awesome. So Opera, I've recently started using DuckDuckGo a little bit more because of the tracking.
DuckDuckGo is great for not being tracked.
I really like
when you do a search on Google tracks everywhere you go, and they drop a cookie, which is just basically a little text file in your browser cache, and it marks and denotes where you go every time you go someplace. And the next time you go back to Google, it uploads all that information to Google. So they have a history of your web surfing and what you're doing, and they pitch ads towards you depending on where you've gone and what you've looked at. And it gets to the point where you're no longer the customer, you're the product. I like DuckDuckGo because they delete that information instantly every time. So there's no record of where you've been, what you've done, and the ads don't follow you.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, part of my business model is to help people that are using Google Ads to be able to advertise to their desired market. And for us as small business owners, advertisements are important. But that doesn't mean that we have to be searching on Google for every single thing that we're searching for. But if you do want a recommendation from an advertisement from a small business, you could potentially go to Google, or you could just search for the small business near you. The saddest part that I've seen, and you and I have talked about this, but the AdWords getting purchased by these big corporations, you search small business computer services, and you're going to see Best Buy and Geek Squad and Apple before you ever get to you.
Everything local.
Right. Everything local is a great option. Absolutely. And even on Facebook and looking there. But the sad part is they've purchased these AdWords. They bought small business computer services and are making small businesses pay more for those AdWords.
They more lease it than buy it, because
yes, for sure.
It's a matter of how often it comes up in the search terms. And they say there's an algorithm out there that puts it all together that will feed it to you. And I won't speak ill of Facebook ads, but they are hardly the most reliable.
Agreed. Especially in terms of target market audience and stuff like that. But for the people that are searching everything in Facebook and having a lot of conversations in Facebook Messenger and stuff like that, it definitely can be like, oh, you talked about this. Would you like this?
Exactly. If you look at the analytics in Google Ads, you can see what the search terms are where your particular site came up more frequently than not.
Yeah.
I computer repair near me is the number one search term where my page comes up as a choice.
That's awesome. Well, knowing that is half the battle when you're making all of your content and your copy and your creative and all of that. So,
And particularly you're searching, because knowing how to search, you can use the same words in different orders and get different results because it affects the algorithm differently.
yes, absolutely.
And I don't 9,500 results.
Right.
I want 15 or 20.
Right. And that's one of the hardest things for a small business is that usually they're not going to be part of that first 15 or 20 in a lot of moments. And they're going to end up buried underneath the big guys.
They pay for the recognition and the banner ad on the side and pick key phrases, because you have to pick a key phrase in order to be selected. And I have half a dozen key phrases that, if it comes up in somebody's search, it automatically selects me as potentially one of the ones to show.
Absolutely. So do you find that most of your traffic comes from those kinds of things, or word of mouth, or local?
Actually, most of my referrals come from referrals these days. At first, I depended heavily on paid advertising. But as I established my business and I established my long-term customers, I've had some customers for 20 years or close to it. Referrals. They're the best advertising in the world.
Absolutely.
I know that. He's done,
Yeah, and your motto being that if you don't know it, you probably know somebody who can help them with it too. So knowing you is like knowing multiple guys.
Precisely.
That's
well,
awesome.
I'm not a hermit exactly. I mean, I have some semblance of a social life.
Well, and a lot of these bigger corporations, that's not their bag to be recommending.
Well, it's not their job.
Right.
Their job is to do both. The minutiae is kind of lost when you go to a corporate. When you call a big box store and for a repair, they don't care about whether or not you're happy a week from now. They care about getting you fixed and getting your money now. They're a store. They sell things. They're not even really concerned with fixing things because they're going to try and upsell you anyway. And my philosophy is I would rather build a relationship than just have a customer, because they know that I'm going to keep their best interest in heart. They know that I want to help them keep their money in their wallet as much as possible. And they can depend on me to do the best for them that I can.
That is really important.
And corporate services, it's not even in their vocabulary.
Right. They just want you to toss out the instrument and get a new instrument because it's easier for them. They can get it up online and running in a couple of minutes and send you along your merry way.
Yeah, if they can keep your information.
Right. Right. Oh, so in your opinion, what would you say is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur?
Oh, gosh. Probably the loneliness. There are no pizza parties.
A lot of us complain about those pizza parties instead of raises at corporate, but I agree with you.
Yeah, well, when corporate's not giving you a raise and there's no pizza party on top of it, it can get, oh man, it's very easy to get discouraged.
Yeah.
Because you are flying solo.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and going out and making myself a frozen pizza is just not the same.
Even ordering one, even if it's piping hot, if there's nobody to share it with, it's just, yeah. So maybe we should be gathering for our own pizza lunches as small businesses. I wonder if we could make that a thing.
I believe there are a couple of meet and greets that go on every week, every month. I've been to a couple. There a lot of real estate agents shilling their businesses, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wouldn't want it to be a networking thing either. It would just be hey, I work from home just by myself. Let's just come together and get to know each other as human beings.
Ideally, I would be first in line.
Awesome. All right. Well, let me kick it around my head, see if I can find a location that makes sense, and think about when we'd do it and what kind of cadence we'd have.
Preferably one that serves adult beverages.
Preferably what?
One that serves adult beverages.
So Friday at noon-ish to make sure that everybody could just take the rest of the day off.
A little early for this kiddo.
Yeah. So, on the flip side of that, what's your favorite part of being an entrepreneur?
Being able to say I did this at the end of it, and have somebody who was in an absolute anxiety attack when I showed up, just breathing a sigh of relief and just, oh, thank you so much. I really, that makes my day. It really does.
Not all heroes wear capes. Some of them have tiny tools to get into your computer.
Very good tools.
You can feel free to use that as your new tagline.
We have lots of teeny tiny tools.
So a lot of us have side causes and things that we want to benefit over time and missions that we want to champion with our entrepreneurship. Is there a cause that you feel that you would like to be able to support, whether through nonprofit donations or
that I already do support? We give to the Komen Cancer Society. I give like a percent of my profits to them. I give a percent of my profits to the Capital Area Regional Food Bank. Just because I've been poor, I know how it feels, and it's good. It feels good to give back.
I love that. The food bank is definitely something near and dear to my heart in terms of anything that you're going to go for. And
granted, I can't give a dozen loaves of bread, but I can throw a few dollars their way whenever I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you could change one thing about setting up a business or even running it day to day, I'm going to give you a magic wand. You don't have to worry about any red tape. There's no one who can tell you, no, you may not have that law or rule or new system. Instantaneously, you could change it. What would it be?
Oh, gosh. I looked at that question and I thought long and hard about it. And I was straining to come up with a good answer. And it's basically, how do I phrase this? Don't be afraid to try something new, because if you do what everybody else has always done, you'll get what they always got.
I love that. That's fantastic advice. So don't be afraid to innovate.
Push the envelope every once in a while.
Yeah. All right. If you had to give advice to someone who's just starting out in 2024, which is so far wrapping up to be a pretty challenging year so far for small businesses, what would your advice be?
Actually, it would be two things. Number one, have yourself a little nest egg, because there are going to be weeks where you're not making any money, and you think nobody loves me, and which brings back the second part, which is don't get discouraged, because it takes a while to get your name and your reputation out there. And there might be some times coming in because nobody knows why am I going to invite this stranger into my house to fix this magic box that I have no idea how it works? And they think the computer fairies in there spreading their pixie dust, and I wiggle my fingers and speak a little Latin and things suddenly work. But
that would be much easier. It would be nice if it worked that way.
The thing is, don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
Because there are always lean times. I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and I know there are certain months where my phone's not going to ring, and there are certain months where I don't know whether I can't use that phrase. We're speaking to the public, but I don't know. I can't turn around without facing under. My phone rings off the hook from 7:30 in the morning till 6:30 at night. And there's times where it doesn't ring at all.
That totally makes sense. There's a huge ebb and flow.
Be prepared. And when it's not ringing, you have to realize that it's not you personally. It's a pattern of the business. Why? Very busy months for me, because that's when sales go on for certain hardware items. And it's after the holidays and people need assistance setting up their new toys. Whereas June, July, everybody's outside playing. They don't care about their computers.
Well, that's nice, because then you can be outside playing too.
This is true. Well, my never-ending honey-do list goes outside as opposed to inside.
We gotta get it done at some point. So, well, So, in terms of moments, we all have moments where we feel like maybe we could have done something differently, or maybe we even got embarrassed. As a small business owner, can you think of like an embarrassing moment that you've had that maybe you'd like to redo, or maybe you just like telling it because it's a funny story?
I think probably having to fire a customer,
Yeah. Okay. And why?
because you almost never hear that, because you called me in because you are relying on my expertise. Don't and it There's nothing worse than somebody who knows just enough to be dangerous. And don't start telling me how to do my job if you don't even know what I'm doing. I take that Just about all nerds take that very personally.
I think that's in all things.
If you
Micromanaging
want
is
me to do
not
work, I'm going to use standard business practice. I'm going to do one thing and I'm going to test it to make sure it works. And then I'm going to do another thing and test it to make sure it works. And I'm going to do another thing to make sure it works. I don't do five things at once. And if it fails, I don't know which one failed.
right.
It's standard operating procedure. And it's like, if I'm sitting here and I'm redoing the wires over here, don't go ripping the wires out over there before I've had a chance to test them. No, we can't. I'm sorry. If you don't stop doing this, we can't do business.
Right. Absolutely.
And they turn around and they do it again. And so I just pack my bags up and go. Good luck finding somebody else. If you know someone, fix it yourself.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the joys and
That's
difficulties.
embarrassing. I'm certainly creating a bad Yelp review right there, to say the least.
But at the same time, that it's not your fault that that interaction didn't work, and maybe they have somebody else that they'll find that'll be better for them. I find that people who micromanage like that have little trust in themselves. It's not really about the other person, whether they're a micromanaging boss in corporate or they're a micromanaging client who wants to be inside of every single little thing that you're doing. You asked me to do it. I have the expertise, which is the reason why you sought me being here.
I know things that you've never read about.
Right, right. And even if you took the time to read about them, you may not be able to implement them either.
Exactly. Because it takes not only tons of practice, but a bit of intuition to be able to make that leap to say, no, it can't be this. It's got to be over here.
And intuition is only developed through experience and repetition of seeing the things all the time.
My argument exactly.
Yep. Everybody thinks it's some woo-woo thing, but it's a gut instinct that you build over seeing things systematically year after year.
Oh, three more.
So, no employees. You've never had employees, right?
I have a couple of friends, associates who are in the same field where, like, I'm inundated. Yeah, can you give me a hand here? But no, as regular employees, my lovely bride is my office manager, and we basically share the profits.
Well, that is awesome. I love that. Teamwork makes the dream work.
There you go.
What's your vision for the future of the company? Where do you hope to be able to take it in the next year, 5 years, 10 years?
Oh gosh, South Carolina, Costa Rica, someplace that doesn't need a shovel.
So, digital nomad to somewhere warm.
Exactly. Well, I do a reasonable amount of remote work now. That's one of my hallmarks is I can do remote maintenance. I don't have to physically touch the machine, I can fix it over the phone. Well, not over the internet. I have encrypted remote control software that requires the customer to say okay to let me in. So it's completely secure. It's 256-bit encrypted. It's basically unhackable. And 9 times out of 10, you don't really need to touch the hardware to fix the problem. It's a software related issue.
That's got to be expensive software.
I can do it from anywhere.
That's awesome. So you want to build up that portfolio so that you could be a digital nomad then.
I put it on any machine that somebody will let me. If you got a problem here, I can connect to you right over the phone.
That's awesome. That's got to be a really expensive software though.
Well, it's not cheap. It pays for itself every year, though.
Okay, that's good. I think about the way that we're kind of in this position with all of the subscriptions for personal life. You think about all of the different streaming services and other subscriptions that you pay for. And then being a business owner, I'm watching more death by a thousand paper cuts with all of the subscriptions and all of it being for business, even though you're just one person. It's a lot.
Well, yeah, but it comes in very handy. It's like I have customers who are 25, 30 miles away. And if they need just a couple of little things, why should I put 50 miles on my car when I can just call in and say, click this, click that, let me in, I'll fix it for you in 10 minutes and you'll be good to go.
That's awesome. That's very convenient for them too.
Absolutely. Some of them love it, some of them not so much.
I think a lot of people are very afraid about their data being compromised. And I see it.
Especially lately.
Yeah.
28 million passwords got hacked out of Facebook and Meta.
Yep. Well, and the problem is
you can't change your password too often either.
Oh, got it.
People who had the same password for 20 years are just rolling dice with the devil.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we've had so many data breaches that, which is amazing because I don't feel like there's been a lot of reparations to the people who have been impacted by those things. There's not a lot that comes from those things.
No, there's not, because, well, they're just bits. The personal touch is not there, and that you're never going to get from a large corporate entity, because you're just a number.
Yeah, even their employees are.
As long as their HR group keeps them from getting sued, they're not going to care.
Yep, bare minimum, right? Gosh.
Whereas a personal business, I have a personal relationship with a lot of customers, and they know that I'm going to keep their best in mind. And if they're running a business, I'm going to keep their ongoing nature of being in business in mind, because I know it is their livelihood just as what I'm doing is my livelihood.
Exactly. So you're going to be a much better steward with it because you see a person, not a dollar sign.
Well, I take it personally. I like to think that I take people's problems, I treat them the same way that I treat my own. And if I have a pearl of wisdom to impart, I'll certainly do so free of charge.
That's amazing. And that's a great quote. We're going to have to pull that one out from this episode because it is, for a small business, it's personal. It really is every single time.
Well, like I say, I've had clients for 17, 18 years. I've been to their house for dinner. We go out on excursions together. They're more than customers. They've become friends.
That's awesome. That says a lot.
And but the flip side of that is you get calls in the middle of the afternoon that are business related in name only, because and like, yeah, I love you, guy, but got to do business.
That's awesome. So what's one thing that you wish everybody knew about running a small business, including customers?
It can be lonely. If you're a sole prop, you're by yourself, like alone in your head all day long. So, you've got to constantly struggle to, number one, bear that in mind and work around it, as opposed to just letting it overwhelm you, because it can be overwhelming also.
Yeah, absolutely. If customers could take away one thing about you from this interview today, what would it be?
I would hope it would be integrity.
That's awesome.
Because I treat everybody's equipment like I treat my own. I treat everybody's data like it's my own. I go out of my way to, you can go to the big box store and you've got a problem with your hard drive, and they swap out your hard drive and they give it back to you, and you've lost all your information because they just threw your hard drive away and put a new one in without any attempts to recover any of the information. I do a fair amount of data recovery. I have a computer in my office dedicated to it that's got scads of specialized software on it, strictly for extracting data from ruined hard drives. And because I am just a one-man show, I can charge considerably less than sending it out to this place in Ohio that's going to charge you $2,500, no questions asked, no guarantees.
Wow, that is insane.
I did forensic data recovery for the state police, and that's basically what he did. And he had a couple of machines dedicated to the thing, and he was $2,000, no guarantees, but $2,000 to start.
Wow.
That's some drug dealer who throws his laptop into the swamp when he's being chased because it's got all this stuff. That's valuable information.
Yeah.
And it's swamp for a week and a half.
Yeah, well, and also that computer that was in somebody's basement that they didn't think was going to flood, that had a once in a lifetime flood, which we've seen a bunch of up in the Capital District recently. Yeah, and now they have family photos that they can get back because they have you.
That, which brings up another point of you should back up always. Any business worth its salt has a backup. Your information is not backed up unless it's in two places at once.
Right, and not both on the computer itself.
No, away from the computer. Having it on the D drive is not backing it up.
Right, right. So maybe a cloud backup, maybe an external hard drive, right?
Yeah, I keep an external hard drive in a fire safe in the other end of my office. And like once a month, I take everything up and I put it back in a fire safe.
It sounds like
machine spouts blue smoke. I'm not that inconvenienced.
It sounds like there are hygiene habits that we really need to be getting into with these instruments that we take for granted.
That's the thing is people take them for granted because they're so innocuous. They're everywhere. And you lose sight of the fact that it's a delicate piece of electronics because it's just there at your disposal all the time. And you stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Where it's much more like your car than it is like your TV, because if you don't do routine minimum maintenance on it, it's not going to last.
Right. That definitely makes sense.
But you don't check the pressure on the tires. You don't do this. Don't expect to get 100,000 miles out of it.
Right. Right. And the same with your computer, because if you're not doing that maintenance.
More so because it is even more delicate.
Right. Wow. And I do want to mention that you helped me out with a computer that I had that unfortunately was not capable of being recovered. And I so appreciate that.
Go.
I did want to make sure that we had the opportunity to talk about it because I think that it's important that we look at how small businesses can create circular economies. And so he wasn't able to save my computer and gave me some options. I could have taken it back and tried to sell it or something like that. But now I know that those extra, kind of like an organ donation, but those extra pieces that would be able to work are now part of a circular economy instead of going into a trash heap, and they can be reused. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people are focused on, because these raw materials getting extracted from the earth, they have a lot attached to them, the people that are being harmed, the planet being harmed, all of those things, just to get these special materials in these items that are so ubiquitous we take them for granted.
Gold inside each machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's several dollars gold inside each computer.
Yeah.
They need particular dirty smelting processes to get, but
right. And so if you don't have to redo that, because this piece on your instrument broke and this small business has something that would actually fit for you, it ends up being really nice. And these corporations, they're not going to do that. It doesn't make sense for them because they want to streamline and trim the fat, and they only do that new because it's easier for them to train for people, and people don't have to waste time, in their opinion, thinking critically and going through stockpiles and reusing items. They're never going to do that. They're going to just throw it away.
That's why there are landfills the size of Rhode Island out in the third world just waiting to be smelted down because people just discard them.
Yep. Yeah. And then we ship it off to some other country because, heaven forbid, we had to see the impacts of our own waste.
You see, I have an acquaintance who's a jewelry maker, and I give her all my old green boards so she can make jewelry out of it.
That's so cool. So this is like nerdy jewelry then at that point.
Bingo.
I love is. You're going to have to let me know who that is, because I'm going to have to link that in the comments if she has any socials and stuff like that.
I will.
Awesome. All right. We are coming to the end of our time, and this has been such a fantastic conversation. I want to ask you if there's anything that I haven't yet asked you that you'd like to share with everybody.
Well, I'm honest as the day is long. I have no poker face,
which is a good thing.
Which comes in handy when I work on a no fix, no fee basis. So I'm not gonna try and take your money. I'm not a plumber. I'm not gonna charge $100 to ring your doorbell. You know, if I can't fix it, I'm gonna tell you I can't fix it. Or more importantly, it's not worth your money to fix, because there's an ROI that you have to look at when you're dealing with these electronics, because they are hundreds of dollars. And, you know, hey, this machine is only worth $140. You don't need $250 worth of repairs on it. Get a new one.
Right.
They're only built to last X amount of years. You've gotten 10 years out of a machine that was built to last 3.5 years. Count your blessings. Get a new one.
So, in a nutshell, I feel like the biggest thread that ties all of this, the reason why it matters to choose a small business for your computer services, especially with you, is that you lead with your ethics, and that you're not trying to get one over on that consumer, on the company that you're working for. You have their best interests in mind, as well as balancing the best interests of the planet and all of the resources that go into it too.
That's the way I was built.
I love that. That is fantastic. That is very values aligned. And I really am so excited that we had the opportunity to connect on Alignable and have our conversation, to be able to look at my computer and all the way to the journey here today to this interview. Thank you so much for spending all of this time with me today.
Oh, by the way, I laptop down, sitting in a couple of other machines, parts of it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that it's had new life. Thank you so much again for joining me.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
I will hopefully talk to you soon.
Anytime.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Tiny But Mighty podcast. Please make sure that you are sharing this with someone who you think might need that white glove service that David offers for computer services, regardless of what you have instrument wise at home, someone who needs support, or a small business that is looking for support. He is your guy, and I really hope that you have the opportunity to connect with him in real life. He is just as genuine in real life, without question. Please make sure that you are following this podcast on whatever channel you are finding this on. Check us out on YouTube to see all of the other episodes and the other fantastic small businesses that we've had the opportunity to talk to. Let me know any of your thoughts in the comments, and as always, please make sure that you are shopping small whenever possible. Take care.